From the headquarters of Tell Us Your English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Sweeney Gray. Concerns have been raised in Colombia as the new Congress, dominated by the right wing and Ivan Duque's upcoming government, has declared their intention to modify the peace agreement with the FARC. One of their targets is rural reform. This rural reform aims to sharply reduce poverty in the countryside. Former FARC members and social movement fear this and other planned changes will hinder the reintegration of the former combatants, as well as the current peace talks with the National Liberation Army, or ELN. Meanwhile, violence continues across the country. Over 400 social leaders have been killed since the peace accord was signed in December 2016. Now, to talk more about these modifications and how they could jeopardize the peace process, earlier I spoke to the Colombian human rights lawyer, Laura Barron Mendoza, who's working on the implementation of the agreement and conflict resolution.
So out of 4,000 ex-FARC members, we have already 12,535 who have been reported before the High Commissioner of Peace. So this shows that there's a will to recuperate and to have a new start. This also shows that the peace-building process is on its way and that it can keep working if we continue with security guarantees, legal guarantees, socioeconomic reintegration, and political reintegration. This last one is linked with the political participation of the political party of FARC in the current Congress.
Now, Barron Mendoza also spoke about the killings of social leaders in the country.
Well, it is true that we have more than 311 victims since 2016. However, this is not a recent phenomenon. In regard with the current killings, we have to link it with the notion of power vacuum and cycle of violence, also known as a power void, which is an analogy between the physical vacuum to the condition when someone has lost control of something and no one has replaced them. So this is what is going on in Colombia. And this is proof that because it is happening in areas completely isolated, such as Antioquia, Arauca, Cauca, Chocó, Córdoba. So now what we have to bear in mind is that from a legal perspective, Colombia is obliged to comply with multiple international instruments that establish the obligation to respect, to protect, and to fulfill human rights, plus the obligations to prevent, investigate, punish, and provide effective remedy. We are here talking about the compliance of these obligations by safeguarding the lives and personal safety of defenders, especially those protecting land, territory, the environment, and those who have assumed social leadership roles in communities on which the armed groups is ongoing.
Ecuadorian President Lenin Moreno is in London, and there is speculation that during his visit, he could finalize an agreement with the British government to hand over the WikiLeaks founder, Julian Assange. Supporters of Assange gathered outside the Ecuadorian embassy in London to defend his right to asylum. Ecuador gave refuge to Assange back in 2012, after the former president, Rafael Correa, granted him political asylum. Now, the change of direction by Moreno puts his asylum at risk. The Swedish court dropped the charges against him, but Assange still fears the United States will seek his extradition for disclosing classified information. On Sunday, the Ecuadorian government responded to the rumors, saying that there is no plan to discuss Assange's case during President Lenin Moreno's trip to the UK. The statement also said that due to the complexity of Assange's asylum and the involvement of different stakeholders, there is no short or long-term solution to his situation in sight. However, despite Ecuador's assurances, concern was once again raised when a white van was seen removing furniture and belongings from the Ecuadorian embassy in London. The WikiLeaks founder has spent 6 years confined to a back room in the embassy. A number of human rights organizations, including UN bodies, have called his confinement inhumane. And the Criminal Court of the National Justice of Ecuador has rejected an appeal of a preventative detention order filed by the defense of former President Rafael Correa. The Attorney General's office confirmed today Correa is accused of alleged links to the kidnapping of the former Assembly member Fernando Balda in 2012. Our correspondent Denise Herrera sent us this earlier.
Hello, yes, Yes, indeed, we are at the National Court of Justice, where the appeal hearing requested by the defense team of former President Rafael Correa has started. The defense team of Correa argued that the decision taken by the judge Daniela Camacho, who ordered the preventive detention of former President Rafael Correa, was unconstitutional. The defense team argued that the former president are living actually in Belgium, so he has to present before the consulate in Belgium. By the order of the preventive detention taken by the court, decided that the ex-president Rafael Correa has to present before the National Court in Ecuador. So we have to wait the decision. We will take the court. Former President Rafael Correa was linked to the alleged kidnapping of the ex-politician Fernando Valda. That is all for now. We will keep you posted with more information as soon as we can. Back to you at the studio.
The 5th China-Africa People's Forum has opened in Chengdu, the capital of China's Sichuan province. The forum's 3 principles include promoting cooperation, enhancing friendship between citizens of Africa and China, and furthering world peace. Chinese President Xi Jinping sent a congratulatory message on the opening of the forum and extended his welcome to the leaders of African countries. The Chinese president is actually in Rwanda, meeting with the President Paul Kagame, where he signed 15 deals, including loans and grants worth millions of dollars. China has become Rwanda's largest trade partner, with 70% of roads in Rwanda built by Chinese companies. The 2 countries hope to develop cooperation in the areas of culture, science, education and human resource development. After Rwanda, he will pay a state visit to South Africa and attend the 10th BRICS Summit in Johannesburg, followed by a visit to Mauritius on his way back to China.
China applauds Africa's pursuit of strength through unity and coordination that will lead to homegrown and sustainable development. China would like to dovetail its development with that of Africa for win-win cooperation and common development.
I want to thank you once again, and especially happy to witness the signing ceremony and the commitment on many bilateral agreements witnessed between China and Rwanda, and looking forward to more cooperation and the deepening of bilateral relationships in different fields.
The development strategy between China and Africa is based on promotion of infrastructure projects, not only the trade of raw materials like in the past. China's foreign ministry has said that in less than 5 years they've signed a number of cooperation agreements in the frameworks of the Belt and Road Initiative signed between China and Africa. China is looking to connect economic and trade development zones in which the manufacturing and the local finance resources can grow, generate income and industry, as well as advance sustainable commerce. China and Africa have witnessed rapid development in their trade relations since the mid-90s. Today, China is the biggest trade partner of the sub-Saharan Africa. Xi Jinping's international tour is meant to strengthen those partnerships with Africa and increase trade, along with the stability of their commercial agreements. According to the Chinese Foreign Ministry, this will also help to promote new initiatives with the help of the BRICS group, formed by Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa.
Preparations are in full swing in South Africa to host the 10th BRICS Summit starting 25th of July. Leaders of the BRICS emerging economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, will meet in Johannesburg for the 3-day summit. Russian President Vladimir Putin, China's President Xi Jinping and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be attending the summit. The looming trade war, especially Chinese and U.S. relations, are expected to dominate the discussion.
The 10th BRICS Summit will be an important milestone as it represents a decade of BRICS cooperation. The summit will culminate in the adoption of what we call the Johannesburg Declaration, which will include our joint commitments for the year ahead.
Time now for a break, but join us again after this video from our colleagues in multimedia.
eternal love is the love that's going to change the future of mankind. So we'd like you to...
we like to say people kind, not necessarily mankind. It's more inclusive.
There we go, exactly. Yes, thank you.
We can all learn from each other.
Welcome back. The third G20 summit of the economy ministers has taken place in Argentina in the midst of growing rejection of the IMF agreement signed off for by Mauricio Macri's government.
To the rhythm of drums, people protest against the economic policies applied by Mauricio Macri. Recent agreements with the IMF have only broadened the move.
Get out of here, Lagarde and IMF. Let's say no to foreign debt and down with the anti-worker famine-causing Macri government. We call on workers' union to implement a 36-hour general strike to face these adjustment measures.
We already know what the IMF is. We know that this government is managed by Lagarde and not Macri. The adjustments and layoffs, how they give away land and natural resources, we will stop that in the streets.
At the end of the G20's Finance Minister Summit, President Macri announced that the economic crisis is over in Argentina, but the opposition thinks that more adjustments, misery and hunger are yet to come.
Argentina is being led by the IMF. We'll have more inequality, austerity, hunger, and less state funds for the needy. He says that he won't give a single extra penny for public education, and the same goes for healthcare.
In the midst of uncontrolled economy and inflation that has exceeded 30%, Argentina asks for a 50 billion credit from the IMF, and it is already being used. An advance of 15 billion has already been granted.
They decided to deepen this adjustment even more. It's a scam. This agreement was planned since they decided to steal our pensioners' money. They're working on labor reforms to damage the poorest sectors of society.
Argentina must make new severe adjustments of over 19 billion, slashing even more public funding, salaries and pensions. The agreement with the IMF creates concern about a possible coming crisis similar to the one the country experienced in 2001.
4 million free-of-cost backpacks will be delivered in Venezuela with supplies and uniforms for the new school year. The Minister of Popular Power for Education, Elias Hauer, highlighted the achievement of the Venezuelan public education system in the midst of the complex economic situation and the financial blockade imposed by the United States government. The minister said that President Nicolas Maduro has guaranteed investment in education despite the difficulties the country faces. Almost 2 weeks after Storm Beryl swept across the Dominican Republic, the capital Santo Domingo is still struggling to clean up hundreds of tons of trash that's accumulated on its beaches. Around 400 tons of garbage, mainly plastic, have been removed so far. But according to the mayor of the city, total waste could be more than 1,000 tons following heavy rains from Tropical Storm Beryl. The city's shoreline was overrun with garbage. Videos showing floating plastic waste have gone viral on social media.
This is the 10th day that we are cleaning up the trash. It's really commendable the work that the Public Works Ministry has done with more than 520 tons of solid waste, which were discharged in previous weeks by the Ozama River to the Caribbean Sea.
The Inter-American Court of Human Rights, known here through its Spanish acronym, the CIDH, has ruled that Barbados should take the necessary steps to remove the mandatory death sentence within its criminal law books. This follows from a June 27th ruling by the Caribbean Court of Justice that Section 2 of the Offenses Against the Person Act was unconstitutional because it called for a mandatory death sentence. And Brazilian political parties are announcing their candidates for this year's upcoming presidential election. But despite many contenders vying for the nation's leadership, the specter of the imprisoned former President Lula da Silva continues to loom over the race.
And the electoral campaign in Brazil kicks off, with far-right frontrunner Jair Bolsonaro announcing his official presidential candidacy for the Social Liberty Party. Bolsonaro, 63, railed more than 3,000 supporters at the party's headquarters in Rio de Janeiro. In an emotional speech, he rejected the idea of a coalition and took jabs at what he called the establishment.
I know the discomfort that I have caused, along with only a few political allies and friends, to what I call the establishment, or the machine, or the system. I am the ugly duckling in this story. But I'm certain, and I tell you I'm certain, that soon we will be beautiful.
Bolsonaro's conservative ideas have given him a controversial reputation. Many fear his presidency would mean a step back in many social issues such as LGBT or women's rights. A former military officer, Bolsonaro also wants to loosen gun ownership restrictions, one of his most contested ideas. And there's speculation that his pick for the vice presidency will be a member of the military. But his ideas appeal to the ever-growing evangelical base in Brazil. His supporters see his extreme views and a clean record as a fresh alternative in an otherwise corruption-tainted government.
Bolsonaro is the change that we are waiting for. He is the savior of our homeland. We want something better for our country, and I think that everyone has to be united because Bolsonaro will be our president.
Besides Jair Bolsonaro, two other candidates have been announced. Ex-Minister Ciro Gomes for the Democratic Labour Party, who's struggling to find a coalition, and Guilherme Boulos, representing the Socialism and Liberty Party, and he's also the leader for the homeless workers movement. In an election period full of twists and turns, Jair Bolsonaro still leads most opinion polls, followed by the ecologist Marina Silva, except if you factor in Lula da Silva. If the former president is released from jail, he is the most likely frontrunner.
If Lula runs, he will advance to the second round. With the lead he has in the polls, it would have been very unlikely he didn't. But without Lula, it's anyone's game. The favorite candidate after him is Bolsonaro, but anything is possible.
In the upcoming days, we will see the remaining 6 parties announcing their picks for the presidential candidates for the October elections. But we are just a few weeks before the registration deadline, which makes it a challenge for the parties to pick their alliances and their coalitions, which is almost the only guarantee they will have to have some kind of advantage in this one of the most unprecedented elections and one of the most unpredictable elections in Brazil so far. Even more if you factor in Lula's possible release, that would change everything in October as well. Mia Alberti, Telesur, São Paulo.
And time now for the second break in this newscast, but join us again after this video from our multimedia colleagues. Welcome back. Opposition parties in the Democratic Republic of Congo have called on President Joseph Kabila to step down ahead of the launch of registration of candidates for elections in December. 5 parties have signed a joint statement calling on its members to participate in the presidential election and to not boycott it. But they've set a few preconditions, the most significant of which asks President Joseph Kabila to not run again and to not use electronic voting machines. Kabila has been in power since 2001. The opposition have also called for free, democratic and transparent elections.
The political opposition will obstruct any electoral process conducted unilaterally by Mr. Kabila's camp and based on fraud or organizing in violation of rights and citizens.
Now let's take a look at some of the other stories making headlines around the world.
2 homeless men were seriously injured after their sleeping bags were set alight near Berlin's Schutterweiden station in Germany. According to the local reports, unknown attackers poured flammable liquid over the 2 men and their belongings before setting them on fire. Passers-by came to the rescue and are now being treated in the hospital. Attacks on homeless people in Berlin are on the rise. Protests have erupted in the Philippines against a raft of policies proposed by President Rodrigo Duterte in his 3rd State of the Nation address. He promises to continue fighting the war on drugs and wants to amend the constitution. This has caused outrage among activists who say he should focus on issues like economy, poverty, and human rights abuses.
Sends a clear message that the people are definitely opposed to any moves to change the constitution and install a fascist dictatorship or prolong the term limits, or remove the term limits on elected officials. The people do not want a self-serving charter change. They want answers and solutions to the worsening crisis of the Philippine economy. They want solutions to human rights abuses. They want solutions to violations of national sovereignty, and not a self-serving exercise that will keep the ruling elite in power.
A makeshift refugee camp on Jean-Baptiste Davaille Square in Nantes, France, has closed down under the supervision of riot police. Around 400 refugees have now been evicted as a result. The identities of the refugees were established at the municipal hall, where authorities will decide on a case-by-case basis whether they can be housed in France. The camp was set up in May and has grown in size ever since. There were reportedly around 280 tents at the time it was disassembled. After Xi Jinping's 3-day visit to the United Arab Emirates, China and the Emirates have pledged to strengthen bilateral relations and will be cooperating closely on the Belt Road Initiative. The United Arab Emirates plays an integral role in China's ambitious plan to connect Asia and Africa by establishing a trade route. During the visit, Jinping admired the Crown Prince's vision to revive the ancient Silk Road.
In a statement issued by Jerusalem, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu revealed that the United States and Canada asked for Israel's help in evacuating members of the White Helmets from Syria. Netanyahu confirmed that he allowed their transfer through Israel to other receiving countries, mainly Jordan. Israel evacuated around 800 members and their families on Saturday. Around 400 members of the White Helmets are being supported by the UN Refugee Agency during their stay in Jordan, while their asylum requests in Canada, Germany and Britain are being processed.
While in Jordan, UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, in close collaboration with the involved governments, is supporting a temporary stay in anticipation of their onward relocation to third countries. UNHCR highly appreciates the generosity of Jordanian government and its people for temporarily hosting them.
The Syrian-Armenian journalist Govt Almasian posted his response to the rescue operation in a video on YouTube belonging to his Syrian analysis site, in which he claims that the White Helmets are affiliated with Al-Qaeda.
It must be heartbreaking, Bild salutes them.
Scientists in Argentina believe that they have discovered the fossils of the planet's largest dinosaur and the largest land animal of all time. They've made the claim after they unearthed fossils of a giant dinosaur in the San Juan province. After analyzing the skeletons, researchers said the dinosaur, named Inhentia prima, meaning the first giant, was up to 10 meters long and weighed about 10 tons. They are believed to have lived about 210 million years ago. And that's how we've come to the end of this newscast. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesyourtv.net/English. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow evening to see our exclusive interview with the Nicaraguan President, Daniel Ortega, at 9:30 Quito time. Join us on social media, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram for Tell Us Your English. I'm Sony Cray. Thank you so much for watching.
We are present at every event where our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, Telesur, the news source from South America and the Caribbean.
Enjoy our programming from Monday to Friday, where you'll find the best information on innovation, conservation, human well-being, and human rights.